Chapter 2 Lyagavy. So he had to go at a gallop, and yet he had no money, not a kopeck. For horses, that is, he had 40 kopecks, but that was all that remained from so many years of former prosperity. But at home, he had an older silver watch that had long since stopped running. He grabbed it and took it to a watchmaker, a Jew, who had a shop in the marketplace. The Jew gave him 6 rubles for it. I didn't expect even that much, cried the delighted Mitya, grabbed his 6 rubles and ran home. At home he added to the sum, borrowing 3 rubles from his landlords, who gave it to him gladly, though it was their last money. So much did they love him. Mitya, in this rapturous strait, revealed to them at once that his fate was being decided and told them in a terrible hurry, of course, almost the whole of his plan. But he had just pretended to Samsonov, then Samsonov's decision, his future hopes, and so on and so forth. His landlords even before then had been initiated into many of his secrets, which was why they looked upon him as one of their own, not at all as a proud gentleman. Having thus collected 9 rubles, Mitya sent for post horses going to Volovya station. But in this way, the fact came to be remembered and noted that, on the eve of a certain event at noon, Mitya did not have a kopeck, and that, in order to get money, he sold his watch and borrowed 3 rubles from his landlords, all in the presence of witnesses. I note this fact beforehand. Why I do so will become clear later. Although as he galloped to Volovya station, Mitya was beaming with joyful anticipation that he was at last about to finish and have done with all these affairs. He was nevertheless also trembling with fear. What would happen with Grushenka now, in his absence? What if precisely today she should at least decide to go to Fyodor Pavlovich? That was why he had left without telling her and ordered his landlords under no circumstances to reveal where he was going if anyone should come along asking for him. I must get back by this evening, he kept saying as he jolted along in the wagon. And maybe even drag this Lyagavy here to execute this deed. So Mitya dreamed with a sinking soul, but alas, his dreams were not at all destined to come true according to his plan. First of all, he was late, having set out on a back road from Volovya station. Instead of 8 miles, it turned out to be 12. Second, he did not find the Ilyonkoi priced at home. He was away in a neighboring village. It was almost dark by the time Mitya located him. Having driven to the neighboring village with the same already exhausted horses, the priest, a timid, tender-looking little man, explained to him at once that though this Lyagavy had been staying with him at first, he was now in Sukhoi Posyolok and would be spending the night in the forester's hut, because he was buying timber there too. To Mitya's urgent request to take him to Lyagavy at once and thereby save him, so to speak, the priest, though hesitant at first, finally agreed to go with him to Sukhoi Posyolok, apparently out of curiosity. But as bad luck would have it, he suggested that they go afoot since it was only a wee bit more than half a mile. Mitya naturally agreed and set off with his long strides, so that the poor priest almost had to run to keep up. He was not yet old and was a very cautious little man. Mitya also began speaking with him at once about his plans, hotly and nervously demanded advice concerning Lyagavy, and talked all the way. The priest listened attentively, but gave little advice. He responded evasively to Mitya's question. I don't know. Oh, I don't know. How am I to know that? And so on. When Mitya began speaking about his dispute with his father over the inheritance, the priest was even frightened, because he stood in some sort of dependent relation to Fyodor Pavlovich. However, he did ask in surprise why Mitya called this peasant trader Godskin by the name of Lyagavy, and made a point of explaining to him that though the man was indeed Lyagavy, he was also not Lyagavy, because he took bitter offense at the name, and that he must be called Goskin. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere with him, and he won't even listen, the priest concluded. Mitya was slightly and briefly surprised and explained that Samsonov himself had referred to the man that way. On hearing of this circumstance, the priest at once changed the subject, though he would have done better to explain then and there to Dmitri Fyodorovich what he suspected, that if Samsonov himself had sent him to this peasant calling him Lyagavy, did he not do it in mockery for some reason? And wasn't there something wrong here? But Mitya had no time to pause over such trifles. He rushed, he strode along, and only when they reached Sukhoi Posolok did he realize that they had gone not half a mile, not a mile, but a good mile and a half. This annoyed him, but he let it pass. They went into the hut. The forester, an acquaintance of the priest, occupied half of the hut, and in the other, the good half on the opposite side of the entryway. Goskin was staying. They went into this good room and lighted a tallow candle. The room was overheated. The samovar on the pine table had gone out. There were also a tray with cups, an empty bottle of rum, an almost empty quart bottle of vodka, and some crusts of white bread. The visitor himself lay stretched out on a bench, his coat bunched up under his head for a pillow, snoring heavily. Mitya stood perplexed. Of course I must wake him up. My business is too important. I've hurried so. I am in a hurry to get back today. Mitya became alarmed, but the priest and the forester stood silently without expressing their opinion. Mitya went over himself and began shaking him quite energetically, but the sleeping man would not wake up. He's drunk, Mitya decided. But what am I to do, Lord? What am I to do? And suddenly, in terrible impatience, he began tugging the sleeping man by the arms and legs, rolling his head back and forth, lifting him up and sitting him on the bench. Yet after prolonged exertion, all he accomplished was that the man began mumbling absurdly and uttering strong but inarticulate oaths. No, you'd better wait, the priest finally pronounced. He's obviously in no condition. Been drinking all day, the forester echoed. Oh God, Mitya kept exclaiming. If only you knew how necessary it is and what despair I'm in now. No, you'd better wait till morning, the priest repeated. Till morning? But merciful God, that's impossible. And in this despair, he was about to rush at the drunk man to wake him, but stopped at once, realizing that all efforts were useless. The priest was silent, the sleepy forester was gloomy. What terrible tragedies realism inflicts on people, Mitya uttered in complete despair. Sweat was streaming down his face. Seizing the moment, the priest quite reasonably explained that even if they succeeded in waking the sleeping man up, still in his drunken state, he would not be fit for any conversation. And you have important business, so it would be safer to leave it till morning. Mitya spread his arms helplessly and agreed. I'll stay here, father, with a lighted candle and try to catch the right moment when he wakes up. I'll begin. I'll pay you for the candle. He turned to the forester, and for the night's lodging too. You'll remember Dmitri Karamazov. Only I don't know what to do with you, father. Where will you sleep? No, I'd better go back to my place, sir. I'll take his mare and go. He pointed to the forester. And now farewell, sir. I hope you get full satisfaction. So it was settled. The priest rode off the mare, happy to escape at last, but still shaking his head in perplexity and wondering whether first thing next day he ought not to inform his benefactor Fyodor Pavlovich of his curious incident. Or else, worse luck, he may find out, get angry, and stop his favors. The forester, having scratched himself, silently went back to his room, and Mitya sat on the bench, waiting, as he put it, to catch the right moment. Deep anguish, like a heavy fog, enveloped his soul. Deep, terrible anguish. He sat and thought, but could not think anything through. The candle flickered. A cricket chirped. It was becoming unbearably stuffy in the overheated room. He suddenly imagined a garden, a lane behind the garden, the door of his father's house secretly opening, and Grushenka running in through the door. He jumped up from the bench. A tragedy, he said, grinding his teeth and mechanically going over to the sleeping man. He began looking at his face. He was a lean man, not yet old, with a very oblong face, light brown curly hair, and a long, thin, reddish beard. Wearing a cotton shirt and a black waistcoat, from the pocket of which the chain of silver watch peeped out. Mitya exclaimed, his physiognomy with terrible hatred, and for some reason the most hateful thing was his curly hair. Above all, it was unbearably vexing that he, Mitya, should be standing there over him with his urgent business, having sacrificed so much, having left so much behind, utterly exhausted, while this parasite, on whom my entire fate now depends, goes on snoring as if nothing were wrong, as if he came from another planet. Oh, the irony of fate, Mitya exclaimed, and suddenly losing his head altogether, he again tried frantically to rouse the drunken peasant. He began rousing him in a kind of rage, pulled him, pushed him, even beat him, but having labored over him for about 5 minutes, again with no results, he went back to his bench in helpless despair and sat down. Stupid, stupid, Mitya kept exclaiming. And how dishonorable it all is, he suddenly added for some reason. He was getting a terrible headache. Why not drop it, go away altogether, flashed through his mind. Oh no, not before morning. On purpose, I'll stay on purpose. Why did I come after all? And I have no means of leaving. How can I leave here now? Ah, absurd. His head, however, was aching more and more. He sat without moving and had no recollection of how he dozed off and suddenly fell asleep sitting up. He must have slept for 2 hours or more. He was awakened by an unbearable pain in his head. So unbearable he could have screamed. It hammered at his temples. The top of his head throbbed. Having come to, it was a long time before he was able to regain full consciousness and understand what had happened to him. He finally realized that the overheated room was full of fumes, and that he might even have died. And the drunken peasant still lay there and snored. The candle guttered and was about to go out. Mitya shouted and rushed staggering across the hallway to the forestier's room. The forestier woke up quickly, but on hearing that the other room was full of fumes, though he went to take care of it, he accepted the fact with strange indifference, which sorely surprised Mitya. But he's dead, and now? What now? Mitya kept shouting before him in a frenzy. They opened the door, flung the windows wide, and dampened the flue. Mitya brought a bucket of water from the hallway, wet his own head first, and then finding some rag, dipped it in the water and put it to Lyagavy's head. The forestier continued to treat the whole event somehow even disdainfully, and after opening the window, said sullenly, "That I'll do," and went back to bed, leaving Mitya with a lighted iron lantern. Mitya, first over the fume poison, drunk it for about half an hour, kept wetting his head, and seriously intended not to sleep for the rest of the night. But he became exhausted, sat down for a moment to catch his breath, instantly closed his eyes, then unconsciously stretched out on the bench and fell at once into a dead sleep. He woke up terribly late. It was already approximately 9 o'clock in the morning. The sun was shining brightly through the 2 windows of the hut. The curly-headed peasant of the night before was sitting on the bench, already dressed in his long-waisted coat. Before him stood a fresh samovar and a fresh quart bottle. The old one from the day before was empty, and the new one was more than half gone. Mitya jumped up and instantly realized that the cursed peasant was drunk again, deeply and irretrievably drunk. He started wide-eyed at him for a moment. The peasant kept glancing at him silently and sly, with a sort of offensive composure, even with sort of derisive haughtiness, as Mitya fancied. He rushed up to him. "Allow me, you see, you have probably heard from the forestier there in the other room. I am Lieutenant Dmitri Karamazov, old Karamazov's son, from whom you are buying a woodlot." That's a lie. The peasant suddenly rapped out firmly and calmly. A lie? If you please, you do know Fyodor Pavlovitch. I don't. Please to know any Fyodor Pavlovitch of yours, the peasant said, moving his tongue somehow heavily. A woodlot. You're buying a woodlot from him. Wake up. Come to your senses. Father Pavel Ilinsky brought me here. You wrote to Samsonov and he sent me to you. Mitya spoke breathlessly. A lie. Lyagavy again rapped out. Mitya's legs went cold. For a pity's sakes, this isn't joke. You're a bit drunk perhaps, but anyway you can speak, you can understand. Otherwise I don't understand anything. You a dyer. For pity's sakes, I am a Karamazov, Dmitri Karamazov. I have an offer to make. You, a profitable offer, quite profitable, about that same woodlot. The peasant was stroking his beard solemnly. No, you contracted for the job and turned out to be a cheat. You are a cheat. You are mistaken, I assure you. Mitya was wringing his hands in despair. The peasant kept stroking his beard and suddenly narrowed his eyes slightly. No, you show me one thing. Show me where there is a law that allows people to play dirty tricks. Do you hear? You are a cheat, understand? Mitya gloomily stepped back and suddenly it was as though something hit him back on the head. As he himself put it later, in an instant a sort of illumination came to him. A light shone and I perceived everything. He stood dumbfounded, wondering how he and an intelligent man after all, could have given in to such foolishness, could have been sucked into such an adventure and kept on with it all for nearly a whole day and night, worrying over this Lyagavy, wetting his head. Well, the man is drunk out of his mind, and he'll go on drinking for another week. What is there to wait for? And what if Samsonov sent me here on purpose? And what if she? Oh God, what have I done? The peasant sat watching him and chuckled. On another occasion Mitya might have killed the fool in a rage, but now he himself became weak as a child. He quietly walked over to the bench, took his coat, silently put it on, and went out of the room. Did not find the forestier in the other room. No one was there. He took 50 kopecks in change from his pocket and put it on the table for the night's lodging, the candle and the trouble. Stepping out of the hut, he saw nothing but forest all around. He walked at random, not even remembering whether to turn right or left from the hut. Hurrying there with the priest the night before, he had not noticed the way. There was no vengeance in his soul for anyone, not even Samsonov. He strode along a narrow forest path, senselessly lost with his lost idea, not caring where he was going. A passing child might have knocked him down, so strengthless had he suddenly become in soul and body. Somehow he nevertheless got out of the forest. Suddenly before him spread a boundless expanse of bare, harvested fields. What despair, what death all around, he kept saying as he strode on and on. He was saved by some passers-by. A coachman was taking an old merchant over the back road. When they drew up with him, Mitya asked the way, and it turned out that they too were going to Volovia. After some negotiating, they agreed to take Mitya along. They arrived 3 hours later. At Volovia station, Mitya immediately ordered post horses to town and suddenly realized that he was impossibly hungry. While the horses was being harnessed, some fried eggs were fixed for him. He ate them instantly, ate a whole big hunk of bread, ate some sausages that turned up, and drank 3 glasses of vodka. Having refreshed himself, he cheered up and his soul brightened again. He flew down the road, urging the coachman on, and suddenly arrived at a new and this time immutable plan for obtaining that accursed money before evening. And to think that a man's fate should be ruined because of a worthless 3,000 rubles, he exclaimed contemptuously. I'll have done with it today, and had it not been for ceaselessly thinking of Grushenka and whether anything had happened with her, he would perhaps have quite happy again. But the thought of her stabbed his soul every moment like a sharp knife. They arrived at last, and Mitya ran at once to Grushenka.